In this tutorial we're going to be learning how to crochet the granny ripple stitch, which is perfect for blankets. Start by making a slip knot using your preferred method. That's how I like to make my slip knots. Then for the granny ripple stitch, your starting chain needs to be a multiple of 23 plus an extra 5. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm only going to be chaining 74. Your chain will need to be longer than that if you're making a blanket. So go ahead and make your starting chain and then come back to this tutorial and I'll show you what we're doing for row 1. To start row 1, work 3 double crochets in the 5th chain from the hook. So this chain here, I'm working 3 double crochets. Those are double crochets in US terms. If you prefer UK terms, this stitch is a treble. So I'm going to go ahead and work those 3 double crochets into the same stitch. And if you've ever worked a granny square or granny stitch before, you'll be familiar with working 3 double crochets into the same stitch or space. This is often called a granny cluster. So these 4 chains that we skipped at the beginning of the row, that counts as a double crochet and a chain 1 space. Next, skip 2 chains and work 3 double crochets into the chain after that. So skip, skip, 3 double crochets in this chain. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to repeat that again 2 more times. So skip 2 and then 3 double crochets into the next stitch twice. So it's my first double crochet, second double crochet and third double crochet. And then we'll repeat that again 1 more time. So skip 2, then 3 double crochets in the next chain. So this is what your crochet should look like at this point. We've got 4 groups of 3 double crochets with 2 skipped chains between them, and then we've got our turning chain of 4 over here. What we've crocheted here is this part of the ripple here. And at this point we're going to start making these sort of zigzag shapes. I usually call these, when I'm teaching a ripple stitch, a peak and a valley. So with a ripple stitch you always have a valley and then a peak, a valley and then a peak, a valley and then a peak. And to get these valleys and peaks, for the valleys we work decreases on top of each other every row, and for the peaks we do increases on top of each other every row. So this is a 1 row repeat pattern because we're always decreasing here and always increasing here. So let's work a decrease together. So for this first row, our decreases are a little bit different to future rows. So to do a decrease here, we're actually just going to skip 4 chains instead of skipping 2. So skip, 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 skip. Then in the next chain here, work 3 double crochets. So skip, 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 3 double crochets here. And that is the decrease because we've just skipped more chains, which means we've made a decrease here because we've skipped some stitches. There you can see it's already looking like that peak over here, the valley, sorry. So between our valleys and our peaks, so our increases and our decreases, we're going to have 4 granny clusters, so those groups of 3 double crochets. So we're going to do what we did over here, and we're going to skip 2, 1, 2, then 3 double crochets into the next chain. 1, 2, 3, and again skip 2, skip, skip, 3 double crochets into the next chain. 1, 2, 3, and then I've now worked 3 granny clusters after my chain 4 that I skipped, so I need to do 1 more. So I'm going to skip 2, skip, skip, then 3 double crochets into the next chain. So now we've worked those 3 double crochets and we've made 4 groups after our decrease, we're now ready to do an increase. And the increases for the granny ripple stitch are the same as granny square corners. So we're going to do 2 chains, 1, 2, and then I'm going to work 3 double crochets back into this same chain that we've already made 3 double crochets. You're going to feel like there's no space in this chain, but I promise you there is. So I'm going to pull these clusters down a little bit so I know where I'm putting my hook, and I'm going to work 3 more double crochets into that same chain. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's the increase that we're going to do for our peaks. As you can see, we're starting to get that zigzag or ripple or chevron or whatever you want to call it shape. So we're now going to repeat these steps across. So we skip 2 chains and then a granny cluster. So we do that until we've made 1, 2, 3, 4. This is our first one of our 4 after this chain 2 space. And then we do a decrease, then we do 4, and then we do an increase. So I'm going to work one more repeat with you, but if you're happy with this pattern so far, feel free to skip ahead to row 2. But we are going to work one more repeat together for those that need it. So we're going to skip 2 chains. So this chain is a little bit stretched here, but here's 1 chain, 2 chains. We're going to skip, skip, 3 double crochets into the next chain. 1, 2, 3, and again skip, skip, 1, 2, 3 double crochets, and then we're going to do this one more time. So when we're counting those 4 groups of 3 double crochets or those granny clusters, we do it after this chain 2 space. So that's 1, 2, 3. So we need to do one more before we do our decrease. So skip, skip, 3 double crochet into the next chain. 1, 2, 3. So now we're ready to do our decrease. So we skip 4 chains instead of 2. So skip, 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 then a 3 double crochet cluster into the next chain. 1, 2, 3. So now we're going to go back to skipping 2 chains, 1, 2, and then that granny cluster in the next chain. And there's my 3rd double crochet of that granny cluster. So I need to do 2 more. So skip, skip, another granny cluster. And then again, skip, skip, and a granny cluster. So if we have a look at what we've done so far, this is what your crochet should look like. You can see we're lined up nicely with my sample that I've made up here. So after our last decrease, so skipping these 4 chains, we've made 1, 2, 3, 4 granny clusters. So now I know I need to do an increase. So to do that increase again, we're going to chain 2 and then 3 double crochets back into that same chain. So 1, 2, 3. So continue repeating this across, doing 4 clusters, then a decrease, 4 clusters, then an increase. And then when you get to your final chain, you should be at an increase, but we're going to work this final increase different. So I'll meet you back here once you're almost at the end of your chain. So I'm almost at the end of row 1 and I've got 1, 2, 3 chains left to work, and I'm due to do another increase in this final chain. So in this final chain we're going to do a slightly different increase to give us an edge to our blanket. So work 3 double crochets into that final chain. 1, 2, 3, then work 1 chain only, and then a double crochet back into that same chain there. And that's the end of row 1. You have 2 choices here. You can continue on with the same colour, but if you want this effect like I've done in the sample, we're going to need to change colours here. If you're going to continue on with the same colour, chain 3 here and then turn your work over, ready to start the next row. But I'm wanting to change colours here, so I'm going to go back and fasten off. So to fasten off, chain 1, snip your yarn, leaving it ends long enough to weave in later. Use your crochet hook to pull the end through the chain. Give that end a pull to tighten that chain, and we've now fastened off this colour. Turn your piece of crochet over so you're looking at the back of that row we've just worked here. Pull up the end of your next colour, then put your crochet hook into that chain 1 space there, not in the top of this double crochet here, in that chain 1 space there. Then lay your yarn tail over the top of your crochet hook. Use your hook to pull a loop through that chain 1 space. Now I have a bit of a trick here that helps to secure this end. You will need to go back and weave this in thoroughly later, but just while we're crocheting, to make sure it's not pulling stitches loose, I like to lay it over the top of my crochet hook here, and I kind of ignore it as I'm making my starting chain. So to start row 2, make a chain of 3. 1, 2, 3, and you can see my tail here is kind of coming back over through that chain there, and that just helps keep it in place for now. So that chain of 3 counts as our first double crochet. So this is the point. The tutorial here is the same whether you're using the same colour as row 1 or row 2. So next, chain another 1, so that counts as our chain 1 space, the same as we made down here. Then work a granny cluster back into that chain 1 space, so those 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Then into the space between the first and the second 3 double crochet group here. So if I pull these apart, you can see a space there that's directly above those skipped 2 chains there. Work another granny cluster, so just as we would for granny squares. So I'm going to work 3 double crochets all into that same space. We don't work into the tops of stitches when we work granny stitch, we work into the spaces between the granny clusters from the previous round. There's my granny cluster, and I'm going to repeat that into the next 2 spaces here. So another granny cluster here. 1, 2, 3, and again 1, 2, 3. So I've now made 4 groups of 3 double crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4. So at this point I know I need to do a decrease, and if I have a look at my crochet, the next space looks a bit bigger than our previous spaces because we've got a chain 4 here where we did the decrease. So the decrease at the valley of the granny ripple stitch is really easy. We're just going to skip this space completely and just work 3 double crochets into the space after that. We're not doing any chains here at all. We're going straight into doing 3 double crochets into the next space. So that's what the decrease looks like. And if I bring the sample down, as you can see when we work future rows, because this is a one row repeat, so we're going to be repeating this second row over and over again until we've finished our blanket here. The decrease is always the same, so I'm always skipping that space to make the valley of the ripple. So now I'm going to do 3 double crochets into the next 2 spaces between the groups of 3 double crochet. So I'm going in here to make those 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, and again 1, 2, 3. So I've now made three granny clusters, and my next space is that chain 2 space at the peak of the ripple. So this is where we do our increase, and the increase is the same as a corner group on a granny square. So we're going to do 3 double crochets into that chain 2 space. 1, 2, 3, then chain 2 to do our increase, then 3 double crochets back into that same chain 2 space. And that's the increase at the peak of our ripple done. And if I bring the sample down, that's always how we increase. You can see my corner groups stacked on top of each other here as we go up through the peak. So now we're going to repeat this across the rest of the row, so doing those granny clusters until the next space is the one with the chain 4 skipped here, and we're going to skip those 2 groups there. Then we're going to do those 3 double crochet groups all the way up until we have a chain 2 space, and then we're going to do that increase of 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So continue crocheting like that all the way along until the end of the row, and I'll meet you here and we'll work this final increase together, and I'll explain what we do for the stitches moving forwards. So this is what your crochet should look like once you're almost at the end of row 2, and you can see we've really established those increases and decreases now. So I've just worked 3 granny clusters after a decrease, so we're on this final increase here. So we've got a chain 4 here, which has our turning chain from row 1, and into that chain 4 space we're going to work 3 double crochets, 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then 1 double crochet back into the same space, just like that. So now we finished row 2. So like I said earlier, the granny ripple stitch is a 1 row repeat, so we're going to be repeating row 2 over and over again. So you could cut your yarn and change colours here, just like we did at the end of row 1, but just to show you how you would do it with the same colour, start by chaining 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, that counts as a double crochet plus a chain 1 space, turn your crochet over, and then into that chain 1 space work 3 double crochets, and then continue on just as we did with row 3, where we're working those granny clusters and then a decrease, granny clusters and then an increase, until your crochet piece is the size that you want it to be. If you would like the yarns that I've used in this sample here, I'll pop them down in the video description. While you're down there, please give this video a like, as it spreads it to more crocheters on YouTube. I'll see you again next week for another crochet tutorial.